why don't you call the police? And their response is always, not always, but most of the time, if you tell them, then the police tells who told them this. And that is a big issue out here, because there are people who will call me, and you know, I told you about one of the incidents, and tell me stuff, and I tell them nothing's done. Or they tell who said it. Personally, I don't care if they know, because most of the kids know me, and they know I'm not about hurting them, and they will tell me things. But, you know, that's Jared telling me to be quiet.
2 minutes.
All right. But that's a big issue, too, because the relationship between the community and the police is important, because I can tell you, one day I was coming down Hamilton. I come out from Multi-Way. I stopped right there at Hale at the stop sign. There was a police officer sitting in his car back to the left. So after I stopped, I got halfway when I recognized he was sitting there, and I looked to see what he was doing. So then I didn't see him doing anything. I went on down the street. He put his lights on and came up behind me and pulled me over. And I said, "What's the problem, officer?" He said, "You went through the stop sign." I said, "If you wouldn't have been on your cell phone, you would have noticed that I stopped there, and then I looked to see what you're doing." He says, "If I didn't have another call, I'd run you in." I said, "Please run me in." But he went on about his business. But these are the things that some of them do. And then you get some who come up and they're so polite and so nice that you wonder where these other ones come from.
And that's part of what the conversations have to be. So the first thing that I think about when I hear some of these, how the police are viewed or how there have been these interactions, is that when I'm teaching police and minority relations, there's not an understanding of how certain things operate in our communities. But on the opposite side, there's also this not being very familiar with how things operate in law enforcement. And I know you've gone through, I thought you went through the Citizens Police Academy, one of the first classes. So there needs to be a conversation about what it is or how we view each other. And that has to be an open, honest conversation. You can't get angry about it. You just have to hear or receive what the other side is saying, and then trust it to be true from their perspective. That nobody's attempting to hurt or harm, but from where I sit, this is how it felt to me, and this is how it looked to me. And until we can have those genuine conversations, there's always going to be this disconnect, including with the 911 calls. I can't convince people that we do not give out their names. That it's this urban legend that exists, and it will still exist because it's culturally embedded. Folks believe we give out their names. We don't have their names. I mean, we physically don't have their names. But that doesn't matter. If the community perceives it to be true, it's true. And if there's one instance when they thought it happened, it's true for every instance. So there's got to be this way where we really can educate each other about how we feel and what we see. And I'm sure, just like I'm going to hear the community say, we feel violated, sometimes we feel occupied, you know, we think we're singled out. There has to be room then on the other side for the conversation when officers say, "But we come here, you throw rocks at us, you shoot at us, you know, we come because we are called to help, but then you want us to casually be in the community, and if you're shooting at me when I'm coming to help you, why would I want to stay in that community where I'm not welcome?" And that's the conversations we got to be careful and open to hear. No more than you would want to go somewhere and not feel welcome than to be forced to stay. And more importantly, not feel safe. So that's what we have to do, is make sure that as we start these conversations, that it's safe, one, to have a conversation, that's respectful of how each side feels, and then we work to a way so that even though we may not see each other's perspective, we respect it, and we can move forward because we're all in this for the same game. We all are in this to make these communities safer. We want to live in safe communities, and officers, you know, they want safe communities too.
Yeah, it's like you say, you have to make both sides be respectful. because just like the people can be very disrespectful, so can the officers. And all of that needs to stop, because that just escalates the bad behavior in both sides. You know, I could have went in another direction when he approached me, and he probably would have tried to slam me. I'd have jumped on him.
Seriously? See, there you go. There you go. And I will be coming to get you out of lockup.
No, seriously though, some of them can approach you and be very, I mean, their tone just escalates. I've watched them, you know. I was at another incident where they were arresting some kids who had stole a car from the north side. And I was just sitting there listening to see, you know, what was going to happen. And so one of the officers walked by my granddaughter and said, "What are you looking at?" And I looked at him, I said, "You know, that's not necessary, officer. That wasn't nice." And of course, she was ready to get fired up. I said, "Don't say anything to him. Let him be ignorant by himself." So she went in the house.
That's a good point, Shirley.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Teaching people how to relate to officers. My one and only experience in Hamilton with police was extremely negative. You know, it's colored my whole perception. 7 police cars finally came after 45 minutes. And they came with an attitude, like, and we saw the progression as they came down Hamilton, where one was coming and it slowed down so they could meet up with the other one. It went through 2 traffic lights. And when they came, they couldn't get the response and communication to be anything other than hostile. You know, when we were speaking as plain and as unaggressive as we could about a crime that was in progress until 5 minutes before they got there. And, you know, that colored my whole perception. So what Shirley was saying is how to talk to police. That's important because when they say, "What you looking at?" And I know what was going on over there on Hamilton and Hale, because my daughter lives there, and we run the art house over there, and there had been some police response after many calls to a dangerous situation that was ongoing at that intersection and in those houses. And I have observed those police sitting there like that too. But when they ask a young woman, "What you looking at?" that's attitude, that's prejudgment, and that's problem. I mean, how could this woman have responded to that police officer when he comes at her? She was made the problem.